Everybody. This is Jenny Clark with Solvability, bringing you another session of Freedom Friday. And today we've got Terry Spain. I met Terry Spain a couple of weeks ago just over LinkedIn and found out he is a Navy veteran that has an expertise in something that's a big issue these days: diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I might have gotten that backwards, but I know there's an institute you went to. Well, I started talking to Terry and I said, please come on Freedom Friday. As a white person, I don't have a language to talk about my values. I can say I'm not a racist, but I don't want to have that conversation around it. I don't know how to talk to people about it, but I say we need to find some solutions and bring people over to the middle to have conversations so we can start going with that. So I'm going to let Terry, by the way, he wrote a great book called Just Lead. You can get your copy on Amazon, and we'll put the link in the show notes because I liked it. It had little places I could write notes, Terry. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Terry, let you introduce yourself, and let's get the conversation going.
All right. I appreciate that, Jenny. Thanks a lot. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terry Spain, as Jenny mentioned before. The institute that she referred to was the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, which is at Patrick Air Force Base in Florida. I was one of the instructors there for 3 years. And before there, I was the Regional Equal Opportunity and Diversity and Inclusion Officer for Naval District Washington in Washington, D.C., which has some parts. I had some parts of the White House, Camp David, the Naval Academy, and a lot of the other places that's in the Washington, D.C. area. So I was busy for a long time in the Washington, D.C. area. So I had to come down to Florida to relax a little bit, and take a breather. But I want to thank you all for the opportunity. I like to be upbeat. I like to, first of all, put tools in your toolbox so that you can understand and get some knowledge and make it conversational. So one of the things that I took the initiative of doing, normally when I teach a class such as this, I would have two people facing each other and they would do this activity. But I kind of went creative and I wanted to do this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do this quick little thing called first thoughts. I'm going to hold up a sheet of paper like this, and it's going to have some information on there. And I want you to think of your first thoughts when you actually see this word. So is everybody ready? Give me a little thumbs up or whatever.
Yeah, but I think everybody's got to have a note card or something, because if we don't write it down, we pretend to write it down. We can't hold ourselves accountable, can we?
Okay. All right. And like I said, it's your first thoughts that you have. It doesn't matter what your first thought is. That's what I want you all to think. But before I do it, I want to just actually give people the definition that I really like for unconscious bias. And unconscious biases are learned stereotypes that are automatic, unintentional, deeply ingrained, universal, and able to influence behavior. So that's what unconscious bias really means. And we're gonna do a deep dive in there. I'm gonna do an analogy that has to do with boxing too, to kind of give you all a different perspective. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. If you could I guess you could type in the comment section, what was your first thoughts when you first saw it? We're gonna do 4 words. This is the first word. And that is, if it's backwards, it's Asian female. What is your first thoughts when you see this? So you can go ahead and we'll go ahead and type some stuff in there, and we can kind of discuss that too. So I see some people said small women with short dark hair, my wife, smart, the country. I've been seeing like different food. These are different things that people were putting in there. Lady at the restaurant, okay. So, and there's no right or wrong answer to it. I just want you all to understand that. This is just your first thoughts when you see these words. So I'm going to pull up the next word, and I want you all to do the same exact thing when you see this next word. And that word is young black male. What are your thoughts when you see that? Your first thoughts, that's to say. Okay. Then the next one, same concept. Old white male. What are your first thoughts when you see that? Moved to Florida. Okay. And the last, but certainly not least, this is the last one I want you all to think about. America. What are your first thoughts when you see that? People got a lot to take on that one, huh?
Well, this is a great exercise that you're taking us through, Terry, because it's making us think, am I judging myself and am I judging other people, even in what I'm putting down? And you're right about whatever pops into your mind first is the most important thing.
Yes, and typically I would have 2 or 3 people matched up together, and they're standing in front of each other. And they would have a word on their paper, and they would have to say what their first thoughts when they see that. But I figured that I could do it this way just to make it a little bit more interesting, because I really wanted you all to do that activity. And this activity is definitely a powerful activity because oftentimes a lot of folks shy from their first thoughts because they don't want to offend anyone or they don't want to make anyone upset with them. So that's why usually when I teach this, I tell people to be honest and upfront, because that's how you're going to understand your biases, and that's how you're going to understand what type of person you are. So show of hands, we can just go like this. If anybody ever seen someone box get knocked unconscious, and he's like, wow, somebody got knocked out. Like, or you've seen somebody
on TV, right?
TV, yeah. On TV, it could be anywhere, but on TV, and they get knocked unconscious. Usually when that happens, you would see the trainer or the boxer, the staff will come over, and they usually have the smelly sauce, or they'll throw some water on their face, or they'll slap them in the face. Everyone has seen that before, right? Just kind of nod your head if you've seen that before. Okay. That person wasn't aware of their surroundings. Obviously, they got knocked out. When they wake up, they look like they're not fully woke. And that's how unconscious bias is to me. And I'm going to put it in this perspective. People have biases that they're not aware of. So they're walking around and they're not knowing what they're doing. That's the reason why it's unconscious. But leaders, all you all that are on the Zoom call today, you are leaders. And it's your job as leaders to give that person that smelly sauce. You crack that open and give them that smelly sauce so that they can wake up and smell the coffee. Or you give them that slap on the face, not in the physical sense, because I don't want anybody to say, hey, Terry told me to slap you or whatever. But just, give them that aha moment, or that, that moment that can wake them up, or throw that water on them so that they can understand. We as leaders have to do that. We have to be willing and able and ready to do different things like that in order for people to see their biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious. And for the sake of unconscious bias, I use that analogy as it relates to boxing, because when that person's knocked out, they're not aware anymore. They're looking around and they're in a daze, but they needed assistance. And that assistance comes from each one of you all that's on that Zoom call, with the smelly sauce, with the water, with the slap in the face. I don't know if you all have gotten an opportunity to do this. I haven't yet. I'm actually going to do it as soon as I get off the Zoom call. One of my friends who's a Harvard professor, he asked me to take a look at the implicit bias test. And I don't know if you all have had an opportunity to do that, but I'm very excited to do it. I'm actually going to do it, like I said, after this. And the implicit bias test is designed to help you assess your unconscious biases. So for those that are interested in doing it, one of the ways that you can find the location of it, just simply go on Google and type in implicit bias test. And it's the first one that usually comes up through Harvard University. I think 3 colleges came together, and I think Harvard might have taken the lead on the implicit bias test. But that's something that you all may want to look at doing, just to kind of get a gauge of where you're at.
So I think that's going to be interesting to take that implicit bias test, because I've heard it, but I haven't stopped to take it. And I'm glad you're kind of challenging us all to say, hey, this would be a perfect time to take a look at it and see what you think, having come out of this training that we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. And like I said, I'm excited about getting ready to take that, just to see where I'm at. But there's several different type of biases, but one of the biases I want to talk about is the infinity bias. And that's usually when you're favoring someone who is similar to you. I've seen that happen oftentimes, especially in the military, where, you ever heard the terminology that duck picks ducks. If you ever look at a Marines usually travel with themselves. They don't usually like to go with other branches of service or things of that nature. They usually like to roll with another Marine. So there's biases there that they're not willing to, sometimes, not all Marines, but sometimes not, they're unconsciously, for some reason, don't even know that they're doing it. But the infinity bias is oftentimes when you feel comfortable with the person that looks like you and not willing to go out and explore other cultures. You're not willing to go out and explore other things. One of the unique things, and one of the things that I mentioned before in my book, was traveling equals a better me. And as a leader, I had an opportunity to travel to 41 countries, courtesy of the Navy, and me being a military dependent. And I can honestly say that there were some biases that I had that were unconscious that I didn't know I was doing it. But it was brought to my attention when I went to different countries. And I was honestly, I was a little shocked. I was surprised. I was like, man, I didn't even think I was doing this, but they caught it. The other ethnicity, other races caught those unconscious bias that I had. And I was very, very appreciative of that. So if you get an opportunity to travel, I know during this time, during COVID, there's traveling has ceased for a lot of folks right now, but in the near future, you'd be surprised to see what people think about Americans, and some of the words that they, and some of them are harsh and some of them are great. One of the things that I've heard that, Americans are very loud. When I lived in Japan for 3 years, one of the things that I've seen when I was on the train, that the Japanese people, they didn't speak, but as soon as they got off the train, they'll say something or what have you, and I was like, but then they would say, oh man, Americans are loud, we definitely, we're talking loud on the train, we're doing these different things, and they're looking at us like, geez, who are these folks? But there's some things that we do that we don't even know that we're doing, but other people will pick that out. So those are some of the unconscious biases that I just wanted to make known. But then we also have this thing that a lot of people do, and I see happen, and I've done it, and I'm guilty of it. So I'm going to admit that, is the halo horn effect. And that halo horn effect is when you have a person that works for you, or you have a person that's your go-to person, they could do no wrong. These people like walk on water, so to speak. And then you'll have that horn effect, and you would never give that person the praise, or that person may remind you of something or someone that you didn't like, and so the entire time that they're working there, they're going to feel the wrath. And so it's very important that we as leaders and as humans understand that that we do have those halo horn effects, and they're sometimes unconscious, and you have no idea that you're doing them. So those are some of the unconscious biases that we usually have. And one of the other ones that I like is groupthink as an unconscious bias. What do I think? What should I say if my opinion was anonymous? What would you say if someone tell you, hey, you can say whatever you want and no one could ever find out who said it or who you are? What would you say? So as an unconscious bias, some people are very nervous as relates to say, hey, am I going to be discovered? Am I going to be outed? you know. So it's very important that you understand that. Say how you feel, but just be mindful oftentimes of who you have working for you or in the room or who you call your friends. Because if more than 1, 2, 3, or 4 people saying, hey, you do this on a norm, then sometimes you have to sit back and think and say, you know what, maybe that is me. Maybe I am doing something wrong. I don't know if you all have ever heard of the Johari window and those 4 panes that they have in the Johari window. And it helps you become a better listener. It helps you become a better person. It's a communications pane, and I could talk more about that on another time. But the Johari window came out in the 1950s by 2 individuals, and they came together and had this terminology called the Johari window. Some people say the Johari window. It depends on where you're from. I'm from South Carolina, so you know, Johari window is how I say it. But a lot of people ask me this all the time, and they say, hey, I'm really working on it. I want to understand my biases. Can you give me some tips, or can you give me some ways of reducing my unconscious bias? So one of the things that I usually tell them is the first step is that you actually have to admit that, hey, I have a bias. You have to admit it. There's no way of getting around it. You have to recognize that you do have a bias. And oftentimes, a lot of folks don't want to recognize that they have a problem. But if you don't recognize that, then you'll never be able to work on yourself. The second thing is identifying what are your biases. Oftentimes, you have people say, hey, you know, you do this all the time. I don't know if you all have ever had friends that say, hey, you say all the time, or you do this all the time. You're like, no, I don't. No, I don't. Well, you're not really trying to identify what your biases are. So if you have friends, families, or coworkers that say, hey, I noticed that that you say this word all the time, or you do this all the time, you identifying those biases. Or you can go to your friends and your family members or someone and say, hey, have you noticed I've been doing this or I've been doing that? And if they're good friends and families, they will let you know, so that way that can help you and kind of engage you and grow as you go throughout your daily lives. Actively challenge your biases. This is the third thing, and refuse to act on them. This is tough because a lot of folks don't like to be challenged, and some folks don't like to challenge themselves. And so it is going to be very important that if you want to be a better person, better leader, better coworker, you have to challenge yourself and recognize those biases. One of the things I want to share with you all is that I'm ambidextrous, but I tend to lean towards my left hand all the time. And I had a sailor that came to me and he said, hey, Chief, I've noticed that you spend a lot more time with folks that are left-handed that are in our department. And I didn't realize it. And I was like, this guy really watching me, you know, and I was like surprised. And as I looked around and I said, you know what, he's right. I tend to gravitate towards people that are left-handed that works for me. And so I brought him up and I brought everyone else up and we talked about that bias that I had, because I would use those left-handed individuals to do a lot of the work that needed to get done. So it was something small, but he recognized it and we identified it and I identified it and I was able to admit that. So that made the workplace is, like I said, small, but it made it a better workplace after that, because then I realized that everyone that I work for or work for me or I work with, they're watching you. And so they're the people that can tell you, hey, am I on the up and up, or am I doing something that I don't know, that's unconscious, that I have no idea or no awareness of what I'm doing? And that's where that Johari window actually comes into play too, with the 4 panes. One of the ones that I like is focus on the individual. And what I mean by that is, when you're focusing on the individual, typically a lot of folks like to lump a specific ethnicity into one category and automatically think that African Americans are the same, Asian Americans are the same, Hispanic Americans are the same. They never get an opportunity, or they never take the time to focus on the individual. And that's one of the things one of the ways that you can have to reduce the unconscious biases. Focus on that person, because then you'll realize that Not all African Americans are the same. Not all Asian Americans are the same. I am totally different from somebody that's from New York. An African American from New York is more of from what I've seen in my experiences, they're more upbeat, they're more aggressive, they're more gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. And me being from South Carolina and people that are from the South, they're a little bit more laid back. They're a little bit more, they'll speak to you, hey, how you doing? And things of that nature. So not everyone is the same, and everyone's experiences are different. So as you're trying to go into your quest of being and reducing your unconscious bias, just remember to get to know the individual first before lumping everyone into one group. And then open yourself to new ideas, images, and people. That's why I mentioned, and I said before, that it's very important to travel, because I've done some stuff that I necessarily wouldn't have never done. And you wouldn't obviously think, oh, African-American don't whitewater raft. I was like, well, you know what, I'm gonna do that. And I whitewater rafted and I loved it. You know, I'm a sailor, so I like water. So there's this certain things that you have to open yourself up to get comfortable with, not just being so comfortable with a person that looks like you, and start getting to know. I'm not saying you have to go run for office and shake hands and kiss babies to everyone, but you'll be surprised when you speak to someone and you actually understand and open up and do things that get you out of your comfort zone, how much of a better person you become.
Well, Terry, you know, you've just given us such great information, and I think you're right that we need to be thinking of people as individuals. But I loved what you said about realizing you had a preference to left-handed, because I'm left-handed. That's why we're connecting. Obviously, that's got to be it.
I knew it's God sent. I knew that's what it was.
That's right. That's right. But, you know, we've really enjoyed what you had to say today. But before we wrap up, what I'd love to do is have you give people, how do they get in touch with you? Because you've got a website, and what else?
Yes. So if you want to get in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn. That's one of the ways. And I also have my website, which is terryspainconsulting.com. And that's where you can go and actually purchase the book as well, if that's something that interests you. But LinkedIn and on my website are two of the most efficient ways to get in touch with me.
Well, that's great to know, because I think a lot of companies are looking at what kind of training they want to do with their employees. And so if anybody thinks there might be an interest, I'd be happy to track Terry down and have him talk to you guys about coming inside your company to do training, because that's his level of expertise. Hey, we went kind of long through all of this, but we really appreciate everything that you brought, Terry. And I saw a lot of activity in the chat window as well. Thanks everybody for being here, and we may have to have you come on again, because I think we could talk all day on this. So everybody have a great Labor Day weekend, and thanks so much for being part of Freedom Friday today.